Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. We're going to go back in time a little bit. The Men came out with an album this year called New Moon. This is their 4th album in 4 years. These guys started up in like 2008, 2009. They're a punk band, and they specialize kind of in this folky, noisy sound.
Yeah, it's an odd combination.
And New Moon is actually kind of the next evolution of their sound. This album, kicks off with a track called Open the Door, which is really just a folk track.
Yeah.
It has like a little piano diddly, a little mandolin sounding instrument comes in. But then Half Angel, Half Light kicks off, and you have what I would describe as this most unique sound I've ever heard, which is folksy punk. Like, how many punk artists have attempted folk music before? So these guys definitely are already, in my mind, climbing to like, like I think of No Age when I think of like abstract punk, or like punk bands with more of an avant-garde sort of edge to it.
Yeah, No Age is definitely where the direction I would have described this in, and to me it's like if No Age was present during like the Bob Dylan and the band Basement Tapes recording sessions.
It's almost
because it has that like southern kind of classic Americana southern rock feel.
Clearly
infused with that noise punk.
Clearly influeed by Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty. Track 5, I Saw Her Face, might as well have come off of Neil Young's after the Gold Rush. I mean, it just it's just slow, clangy guitar. It's just all around one of my favorite tracks on this album. This album, it's not all that folk sound though. This album transitions later on in the album to the kind of noise punk that you would expect from the Men, and with
gets a little thrashier, a little more grating.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom, what was your take on New Moon? How did it hit you as an album?
This one was a little bit difficult for me because we've talked a lot about the sound already, and the sound is something that I find really interesting, that I really respect when bands venture into kind of new territory, experiment a little bit. But I've just found myself struggling with the actual songs and the performances. I didn't find them particularly gripping.
Sure.
And especially in the vocals. Excuse me. I like the vocalists, the melodies, the writing pretty well. But a lot of the time, the performance to me comes off as being just a little bit lazy. It doesn't really bring much more intensity to the sound, so then it all just kind of ends up washing over me because I'm getting this intense guitar sound, but then I don't feel like the vocals really match it.
Yeah, I can totally see that. In fact, with most punk acts or even like acts like Titus Andronicus, I feel like you're either having like a vocalist who's like screaming at you, like he's just thrashing out and screaming into the microphone, or you have a more drunk sounding vocalist. Like we've commented on 2 different reviews for Titus Andronicus' most recent albums. And really, I feel like the Men kind of walk this line. The guy definitely sings from time to time.
Yeah.
And on the tracks in which that there's a larger vocal presence, I actually do get a fair sense of like, hey, this actually, like, you can actually hear some emotion in his vocals. Vocals are very key, a key element to a sound when it comes to conveying emotion. I mean, that's why there's so many bands with vocalists out there. And not every band is post-rock. But, in this album's case, I feel like the way, I think production plays a lot of a role in the vocals,
I think it does too. Mostly because they get kind of washed in with the rest of the wall of guitar, and sometimes a little bit covered up and muddled. And I don't know, maybe if they were a little clearer, then that would help. But there's also clarity in performance, and there's clarity in production.
Totally agree.
And those two, to really have present vocals, you kind of have to have both. And that's clearly not what they were going for here. But I just have to ask myself if I would like the album a little bit better if they had gone for that. Now, at the same time, I want to point out the last track, Supermoon, which is like this 8-minute epic closer. It actually reminds me a lot of the last track on the Doors' self-titled album, where it just kind of descends into madness. And obviously here it's a little noisier in the guitar even, but I liked that because I felt like the guitar intensity took over. I didn't need as much from the vocals. So and as a closing track, it was quite a statement. So it kind of made me look at the rest of the album, and while there are some moments I really like, I just felt like nothing really stuck out to me. I think the vocals got kind of washed out, and then I was left with the instrumentals, and there was certainly plenty to enjoy stylistically, but nothing that really gripped me from a songwriting perspective.
Yeah, and I was totally with you there for a majority of my listens, and then towards like the last couple of listens I had, I kind of realized what was going on as far as like an album listening experience. The thing about New Moon is that there really isn't any standout defining tracks, which is something that I think that every like legendary album needs to have, as we mentioned in our previous review. But I do feel like this album really does have a good flow as an album. It has two very different sounds.
Yeah.
The first is this, like, they're flirting with this folk sound that is actually kind of cool, but then they're infusing punk elements to it. And that's a very original idea, and I really get into originality. That's something I value very heavily. Somewhere about halfway through the album, after track 5, I Saw Her Face, which is one of my favorite tracks on this album, you get to an instrumental that's high and lonesome, which kind of works as like transitioning from side A to side B on this album. Then track 8, Electric, I See No One, track 9, Bird Song, Freaky, and then it ends in Supermoon. The last track that Tom, you were describing, they're all more just punk and noise based. So what you have is this like fluid motion. It's like, you know, you're like, they give you hints that, hey, we're a punk band, but we're playing with the sound. We're trying to show that we can do all this new stuff, to present these new ideas, and then they slowly just reveal their hand as they're as the listen progresses. And what happens is that this just like this sound, this aggressive, noisy punk sound that sounds really fresh, is kind of unveiled to you at the end of the album in Supermoon, and it's just kind of an overwhelming experience because the album has totally transformed. It's taken you up somewhere, and that's something that I definitely look for in an album, is like, what is the function of the album? Is the listening experience take me from point A to point B? In this album, New Moon totally does that.
Yeah, that's really fair.
Yeah. So one thing that I thought about this album is that I couldn't get over that. And after I kind of put all those pieces together, the individual tracks, needing to have individual tracks, didn't kind of come out. But I can totally understand how, like, if you're looking for like more clarity in the vocals and looking for that like one cohesive sound, like this doesn't really present that.
Yeah,
so.
and I just felt like there wasn't as much individually to latch onto. It's kind of, you dig the whole experience, or you're not really going to dig it as much. And I still like this album. I think it had a lot of good to offer, but I know you liked it a lot more.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit apart on this. I'm going to go 81.
I'm going even 70.
Okay, so that puts us at 76?
Yep, 76.
76. So that's a mark of a really solid album. Now, obviously, we're a bit polarized on this one. You guys don't see Tom and I disagree on an album very much, so we're really interested to see where you guys felt. Did you feel that this album didn't have the cohesiveness you were looking for, or did you like the transgression and sound that you heard on New Moon? Please leave us a comment at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what you would like to see us review on this YouTube channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.